Wow, what a room. That's awesome. What an intro.
There you go, cool.
What do we do now?
Jeez, how do we follow that act? That's incredible. Wow. I'm feeling vibed.
Oh, actually, no, I'm actually a little intimidated.
Yeah, I want to do a workout now. I've just had a bloody load of caffeine. This is awesome.
Well, thanks for having us, and thanks so much for everyone making the effort to get here. 6 o'clock's hard through big traffic and long drives. I know a lot of people have done, so thank you so much for making the effort, and thank you so much, guys, for having us. It's funny, I was actually saying before, it's been a long time since I've come into a place that's got a really cool vibe, and that's the vibe is created by the tribe. So well done, everyone, and thanks for having us again. So today we're going to talk about some really fun stuff, and of course after that thing, I feel like it's going to go woo. So we're going to talk about some fun stuff because that was a really fun intro and it's a really fun kind of place. We've done a recent seminar series talking about the handbrakes to health, talking about a lot of the negative aspects in the world that we're stuck in that might be inhibiting us from getting our results that we feel we deserve from all our efforts, and all that information's still out there and we can share all that sort of stuff. It's on our webpage and stuff. But the fun stuff, what we want to do is use that same sort of information about how to manipulate hormones, all that cool stuff we've learned about gut and gut health and everything, on how to actually get better performance. So performance is different for everyone, so for some people we're looking at muscle gain, for some people it's fat loss, for most people it's both of those. And then otherwise it's usually mental performance and also maintaining or achieving wellness. And an interesting thing about wellness is very different to what a lot of people feel, but wellness is actually an absence of symptoms. So it's like, when you're not euphoric when you're well, that's drugs. So when your wellness is basically an absence of symptoms and giving a great building block that you can actually launch from for performance. So that's the way we're trying to get to that stuff today. So the coolest bit is there's a whole heap of really great new data that's coming out in regards to how to build muscle and how to burn fat and all those sort of things. So we get to share some of that with you today. And I don't know what it is about this place, but it's a really nice place and it's a really cool vibe. And the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight is it's going to fit the theme really nicely because we've just gone through this crazy-ass era revolving around angry stuff and people. Testosterone, androgens, using these anabolic steroids that are all based on testosterone that have roid rages and all these other sort of side effects and angst and anger and aggressions. And we've gone through an era where everyone's listening to the aggressive music and they're smashing stuff around in the gym and everything like that with intensity, The new wave of information coming out, we've discovered that we were kind of off the mark a little bit in regards to that. So the most anabolic hormones, the hormones that build the most amount of muscle, is not actually testosterone, it's estrogen, which is the female hormone. I'm going to talk about how and why that is so damn important, not to block estrogen, but to make sure we can clear away the estrogen after it's done its job, because we're going to talk about how amazing estrogen is. And oxytocin. And oxytocin is our love chemical, the orgasm chemical, the old soft porn in the squat rack we're going to get instead of the old angry buggers, glaring at you across the gym. It could be really weird if they're glaring at you across the gym for an oxytocin.
Yeah, you don't want that. You want the right person glaring at you, not someone you don't want glaring at you. Tonight we've got a great night too because we've got about 45 minutes of talk and then we've got about 45 minutes of questions because we've realised that you guys have got a lot of questions and we're here for you guys tonight to answer any questions you've got, whether they're about ATP or not, about health, anything related, anything about fixing your car, forget about, but health related, we're good. We've got that wide. So that's what tonight's all about.
And names of colours, don't ask about that. we don't know colour names. Anyway, that's a different topic
Peaches
for
of
a
fruit.
Different seminar. Don't miss that let's talk about colour names seminar.
Yes.
And a cracker. So let's talk a little bit about how estrogen is so damn important in building muscle and why we definitely don't want to block it, but how we can kind of utilise these sort of hormones. So the new research when it comes to building muscle is fascinating because there's a lot of new data coming out because we've got new ways of testing muscle and new ways of testing everything and what's changing. We've got all this weird new genetic stuff that's just come out of this recent era of genome testing and that sort of stuff. So they've recently done a whole heap of trials over in the States through the International Society of Sports Nutrition where they're actually creating these trials to make people build muscle as part of the trial and then measuring what's building. So that we can actually see what builds first. And what we discovered is it's collagen. Okay, so what they found is that they tested for all the mTORs and the IGF stuff, which is what we all were talking about with all the amino acids and the whey and just over-consuming protein, those high calories and that sort of stuff that all revolve around insulin and that sort of stuff. They measured all that and they found no changes in that in the initial muscle growth. What actually happens when muscles start to grow is the connective tissue and the collagen around it swells up and it gets bigger, and the muscle's typically actually full of water with a big swollen sock around it made of connective tissue and collagen. So once that then makes that larger sock of connective tissue and collagen, then later on you go and fill it back up with meat. Okay, so the muscle cells, the muscle protein synthesis, or those extra muscle cells that we get from eating the extra protein and all the other foods and wheys and steaks and eggs and all that sort of stuff, that comes in after. The initial stages are all building more collagen. And that's really fascinating because collagen's totally different makeup to all the other meaty parts, and totally different hormones drive collagen. So with estrogen, the relevance of estrogen in collagen is that I'm going to get shot at the end of this. I always do. Every time I talk about estrogen, I get so nervous. I start sweating. But the estrogen, what estrogen does in a monthly menstrual cycle, and I typically try not to make eye contact during these sections with anyone. So during a month, I'll look at the roof. No, so during the first 10 days of your menstrual cycle, you're actually building collagen. And that the main part you're doing is building a collagen meshwork to build the actual endometrial tissue, which is the period. So it's all within a week. You're building this whole meshwork of collagen. And then, as the hormone levels drop, your body, the estrogen, as it drops, you can't maintain that collagen. And these little cells, these fibroblasts, run around the body and eat up all the collagen, just so that you can eat up the collagen through the womb and you can have your period. And that's just how it happens, okay? So the immune cells just go through, eat up the collagen, and then it just happily falls out. But the problem is those same immune cells migrate all over your body eating up collagen. So the reward for your monthly periods is predisposition to wrinkles and cellulite, because what happens is these immune cells go and eat up all the collagen all over your body. And then you have your period, and then the next month you build them back. The funny thing is any netballers out here, if you're just prior...
You didn't point to me, did you?
No, I did this.
Oh, right, okay.
And then any netballers out there, you're more predisposed to having a knee injury just prior to ovulation when your estrogen spikes at the highest, because it makes so much more collagen and your collagen becomes more relaxed. So you're much more predisposed to injuries when your estrogen's at its highest.
That's why women get more injuries in the knees.
And bigger feet.
Yeah.
You get bigger feet around just before you ovulate. So there's a time where your plantar fascia will slightly flatten out and stretch out, and the feet actually get longer throughout the menstrual cycle. All evidences of, signs of estrogen building extra collagen and helping that collagen to become more elastic and more flexible. Very important if you're going to have a baby and your hips are going to dislocate, for example. So you want flexible collagen in those sort of situations. So all of these things, and then you get rewarded with menopause.
It's a big reward.
So... But us blokes, we can benefit from this, okay? This is where I'm getting to. It's really important.
It's all about us.
No, because basically what I want to know, what I want everyone to know is it's really important to get a certain amount of estrogen floating through. We need the estrogen from the connective tissue. We need it for the bone. We need it for our muscle. So don't ever go onto estrogen blocking campaigns, and if that's your goal is to lean up. It was a big trend through the bodybuilding industry, and then they pretty much do it coming into competition, and then they stop when their muscles start to flatten out. So connective tissue is really, really important. So Steve-O, tell us some stats about connective tissue, because it's freaky.
It's freaky stuff. Now, connective tissue is, of course, the tissue that connects, basically all your body together. And connective tissue is largely collagen. And, the old days of providing nutrition was putting people on loads and loads of whey or of dairy-based proteins. And that's not connective tissue. The collagen itself is what you want to be taking to build your own collagen. And there's specific amino acids that are unique to collagen, such as hydroxyproline, for example. Anyone heard of hydroxyproline here? Good. Because that's what makes up your, a large part of your connective tissue. That's the rate-limiting amino acid that can make the collagen. So it's very, very important that you ensure you have enough collagen, especially ladies in the room, because you're losing it, aren't you? You're losing your collagen, menstrually and cyclically. So that's probably the bit about collagen. But of course, supplementing with collagen is a great way to build muscle, as Matt said earlier too.
That's crazy. I mean, if you have a look at the muscle mass itself, you're looking at about 6 to 10% of the muscle mass is made up of connective tissue, but it generates about 30% of the power. So you're going to actually get much more gains by supporting that that collagen. So with that hydroxyproline, that actually makes up about 30% of the whole collagen molecule. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about collagen peptides in a sec too versus just hydrolyzed collagen. But with that hydroxyproline, when we had the German scientists come over and showing us all the new research from the peptides, they're showing the peptides have this amazing effect. So peptides come through, they're absorbed intact, they go through and they activate certain receptors and they activate certain pathways as a peptide. So a peptide is a combination of amino acids, and in this instance it doesn't get digested in the gut, it's absorbed intact, it goes to the muscle tissue, activates a receptor, and then at that site the connective tissue, the peptide is broken down to release the amino acids, and that helps the growth. So that's how the peptides work. Outside of the peptides, collagen has hydroxyproline, and only collagen really has hydroxyproline. I think there's a bit in alfalfa sprouts and some moss, but there's no other vegan sources of hydroxyproline. And when the German scientists were showing me all about when they're showing me all about the collagen, the markers that they used to show that collagen was building healing wounds and getting to the knees and getting to the skin and doing all that sort of stuff, they actually would trace the hydroxyproline movement. So although talking about the massive amount of benefits that come from collagen purely come from the fact that it contains this thing called hydroxyproline. So then what I did then is I kind of cheated a bit because I thought that was a cool idea for the hydroxyproline, and then we went and made that out of plant material so we could make a hydroxyproline for vegans. So we made a product called Vegan Essential Amino Acids, but it's basically deconstructed collagen made out of vegan plant sources. So if there's any vegans out there that have been wanting to any of the benefits from collagen, they can hook into that product and get it. Otherwise, what you're looking at is collagen is hydroxyproline 30%. It gets a certain amount of peptides, and each type of collagen's got a different type of peptide depending on how it's made. If you get just standard hydrolyzed collagen, it's basically just broken down to a point where you've got a whole heap of amino acids, and the amino acid profile in collagen's not that flash. It doesn't have any of the branch chain amino acids, it's got that hydroxyproline, and the rest of it's just bits and pieces. But the difference is with Body Balance that we have in the No Way is they actually make a specific peptide that is found within the protein and tested for and standardized to make sure it's there every time. And then the Germans, it's kind of a cool story the way the Germans describe it too, because these is a company that had been making gelatin for over 100 years. And then what they decided to do was think of outside the box and have a look at different ways of processing the gelatin. So they would actually stop the process at different stages of production until they got to a particular peptide chains. And then what they did is they didn't dare dream of what they could do because these were the German scientists. So they just got these German peptides. Very strict. I don't know what a German peptide, but they got these collagen peptides and then just put it into these medical models measuring mTOR and AMPKs and all these typical markers that we use for fat loss. The Body Balance one showed significant improvement in building muscle and burning fat, and then they did those studies on it. There's so many papers getting published on it now. There was one published really recently, I think August or May, just gone, but it basically was done on recreationally active men. So it was done on this type of demographic of blokes that had hit a bit of a plateau for training, and then compared to placebo, and showed that it can significantly increase a couple of kilos of muscle mass purely on top, significantly improve strength and everything like that. But the best thing about that paper is it explains all the mechanism of action, that they're finally working out how collagen's working. And there's some studies that'll be published next year that showed collagen to do 3.5 times the amount of muscle gain that had whey could achieve over placebo. And then it also had double the amount of fat loss and about 4 times the strength gain over 3 months of using collagen, the No Way Body Balance versus a whey protein isolate. And then these new research now finally coming in going, it's because it feeds the collagen. It does nothing really inside the muscle protein. It actually directly feeds the collagen.
And what I loved about that paper in May that was released in Nutrients, if you're wondering, was basically when we said it was compared against a placebo. And you might be thinking, well, a placebo is a nothing and therefore it's got no protein in it. But actually the placebo group ended up consuming more protein than the collagen group, even with the collagen. and they still didn't gain the muscle. So it showed it wasn't just less protein. They actually had the placebo group ended up eating more protein, and yet they still built less muscle. So that's an important aspect, showing that collagen through the effects Matt said, and not via the mTOR and the AMKs and those sort of things that normally drive muscles. If you're writing it down, it's mammalian target of raptomycin complex 1 is mTOR. I know you were writing it down. I was like, that's a terrible word, but that's the mechanism by which the branch chains and the ways build muscle, and this works independently of that because it feeds what's actually in your muscles. So that's what I love about it. So the paper's amazing.
And the other things that were coming up with these papers is a lot of these wheys and a lot of just standard protein foods, they hit your macros, so you get the protein that you need for the protein synthesis. But when you take a big dose of a protein around workout, it's supposed to do this insulin-like release. It's supposed to work through this insulin-like growth factor. Now, there's this massive problem going through society of insulin resistance. Now, most people, when they hear insulin resistance, they think diabetes, or they might have polycystic ovarian syndrome and have heard that insulin resistance syndrome is a form of polycystic ovarian, another insulin resistance, and blah, blah, blah. But the people who actually suffer from insulin resistance, the first ones you see are those blokes that eat and can't put on muscle. Because what happens is if you are resistant to insulin, you're resistant to insulin-like growth factor and you can't put on muscle. So within these groups, when they were studying versus placebo and versus collagen, collagen has got nothing to do with insulin. So collagen builds muscle by feeding the connective tissue to build more muscle. And it builds a bigger muscle bundle that you then fill in with all the meat through your training and from all your eating. But if you're insulin resistant and you're just focusing on whey stuff and standard proteins that don't have these peptides and don't support connective tissue, then for some blokes, they're going to get great results. But for others, they may not get any results. I've got to show you some of these studies. Oh, I think I brought them too. I will find them and I'll show you this. Because there's this fascinating study, and I get caught up in stuff. There's a graph in this study that I could not get past, and I tracked down the author. He's my friend now. I annoyed the shitter out of him because it was bugging the hell out of me, this graph. So what this study was, it was a study to see with what's building when we build muscle. Okay? So what they did, there was no supplements, by the way. This wasn't a supplement trial to build muscle. There was no supplements, there was no steroids. It was just using everything that is proven in science today on how to build muscle. Calorie surplus, resistance training, everything we think we know, everything that's proven through the International Society of Sports Nutrition, again, this coordinated this study. In this study, when you see the graph, yeah, it worked. 60% of the people, or a statistically significant amount of the people, built muscle. But seriously, man, there were 30 to 40% of the people in this trial that lost massive amounts of money. There was one poor dude who lost double the amount of muscle as the bloke that built the muscle. There's one guy that built a heap of muscle. Well, one dude lost twice as much muscle as that dude. And I was like, I need to know these dudes. Hey, I need to find these people. And what the hell is this guy's sick? Like, and what spun me out about it is this was a study confirming what was proven and known to science. But 30 to 40% of the people in the trial actually lost muscle. They were excluded from the study, and then they just studied the group that put on the muscle to find out what worked for them. The next study that they're going to publish is on the people that lost the muscle to work out what they didn't have that these guys did have, you know? And so, but that blew my mind to see that something 100% dead set, statistically proven as a successful thing worked 60% of the time, every time. Like, and supplements, we try to get these really high success rates, but the reality of it is you've got different things work for different people. So some people take whey, they do the resistance training and they just get massive and they bulk up. They're not insulin resistant. Other people that are insulin resistant are better off with collagen and they'll get those benefits, build the sock and then fill it in with protein. And it doesn't matter what that protein food is. It could be eggs, cheese, nuts, seeds, whatever, you know?
Absolutely.
Cool.
You talk about insulin resistance, it's absolutely huge out there in society. Gerald Reaven in 1997 termed this thing Reaven syndrome, so it was only a few, 25 years ago. And since then, we know about 1 million Australians have diabetes, so that's insulin resistance, most of them are the type 2s. But then now we know about 1 in 7 women have a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome. Have you heard of that one? PCOS? Those sorts of things. Men, we get a lot of insulin resistance as well, so that's diabetes, sometimes a long way before diabetes, but it's pre-diabetes. So without insulin working, insulin-like growth factor, which is the thing that puts muscle on, when insulin finds with growth hormone to put muscle on, it doesn't work in those people. That's why you can get fantastic results, but if you're insulin sensitive. But if you're insulin resistant, like a lot of people, you're going to really struggle with muscle mass, and you're going to struggle with a lot of other health issues. You're going to get hormonal issues, you might get acne, you might get PCOS, all those sort of things. It's a massive issue out there, and unfortunately, a lot of the current things you see in the gym, which is high carb eating and whey protein, does actually make it worse.
So the hypertrophy secrets that we've discovered, that is all coming out now, it brought me back to a lot of the old school stuff as well, like creatine. Creatine is excellent, okay? Now, it just keeps getting better. The research on creatine, and every time they think there's a bad thing about it, they try to test that and they can't recreate it. Creatine is safe, effective, and awesome. I used to not believe in the loading at all. I never saw any benefit in the loading for people. I just didn't see that would work. I've recently been talking to some dudes that have been doing this thing called cluster training and working with the guys that pioneered creatine. They're doing the 20 grams of creatine per day as a loading for about 3 to 4 days. And what happens in that instance is you hold massive amounts of water. Like typically you can go 3 to 5 kilos of water in that week of just putting on weight and bulking up. But when you do the creatine, there's a new style of training. You look up this thing called cluster training as well. And they do 3 reps, 3 RMs, so 3 rep maximum, and then wait 20 seconds. And what they do is they preload the creatine, then they do this cluster training, and they can build significantly more money. Money?
That'd be all right.
That's the South Americans too. Yeah. That's Diego. His name's Diego.
It's a different kind of white powder, I think.
Yeah, anyway. Different creatine monohydrate. Cocaine monohydrate.
Yeah, but that's the one.
I tell you, they do more than 3 RM. And they can't stand still for the 20-second break.
Hey, here we go.
Well, Steve knows a lot about this.
Oh, I was a muser for years.
So with the creatine, what happens is as they do the cluster training, they get a lot of muscle pump. And because of the hydration that creatine gets, it stretches out all the fascia and stretches out all the collagen. And that's a big signal for the collagen to grow. Another big signal for the collagen to grow is stretching. So you know how we do people do the partials, or you train to get a real big pump and that sort of stuff? Well, that's pumping at fat. That's a latitudinal pump. When you're in that phase, if you then hold out those static stretches and you pull it out, you're actually making that whole fascia sock more permeable. Now, when something gets really stretched and really full of water, it resembles an injury. But it's not an injury because you haven't torn anything. You've just created this inflammatory signals with the water and the stretching, and that triggers all these satellite cells to migrate and heal. Again, we said before that estrogen regulates this. So I don't really want everyone just to go take the pill or something post-workout, but what you can do is there's this stuff that we make called Prototype 8. Now, we made it years before they discovered this estrogen stuff. But Prototype 8, man, this is a cool paper to find. There's a paper on PubMed that talks about phytoecdysterones are the most natural anabolic compound ever discovered, should be banned. We don't know how to ban them. They're in 5% of the plants on Earth. And the way they discovered is insects. When they need to grow a new shell, they'll go and find on these leaves and they eat the outside of the leaf and then move to the next one and just eat the outsides. When they needed a new shell, and they went and tested, found the outside, there's these things called phytoecdysteroids. When tested, they stimulate protein synthesis greater than dianabol, which was a very well-known anabolic steroid. They also increase glucose disposal by about 30% because they make you sensitive to estrogen, insulin via an estrogen receptor. These stupid words. So they fix the insulin issue via an estrogen receptor. Because they activate an estrogen receptor, they send a negative feedback to the brain and the body saying, don't need to release a whole heap more estrogen, so you don't get the estrogen effects on the fat and the fluid. And then at the same time, it drives the fat through from around the muscles and helps to get those striations in through the muscles. And that's a product called Prototype 8 that does that, very anabolic compounds, and it's a cream, all right? So when you take these ecdysterones, we process them quite quickly through our gut. Making them a cream, we can directly access into the muscles that we're training. And we make that into an arginine cream, so it's a very powerful vasodilator, so it can fill up your muscles with blood. But the key is it can pump it too much, so you can actually get in the way of your reps. So anyone that does CrossFit or anything like that, don't touch the stuff before you train because you'll get hardly any reps out because you get too much muscle pump and you can't lift your arm. So the way you do your prototype 8 is you wait for that last 10 to 15 minutes, wait till you're going to do those final sets towards exhaustion, and this is the key. So you wait towards that last bit, butter up with your prototype 8, then you do your big final thing until you're fully blown out, like you've got so much muscle pump you can't make a contraction, and then you stretch it, all right? And then you've made all your fascia crazy permeable, plus we've had a chance for your muscles to engorge full of prototype 8, activate all those insulin aspects and all those connective tissue stuff. Then you have your no-whey protein. So after you time your prototype 8, so it's actually driving the nutrients in. It can increase the amino acids. It drives leucine, anything that's leucine in the area, it'll drive it in for anabolic purposes. But any of those other benefits out of the collagen, it's just going to stimulate those estrogen receptors in the connective tissue and get heaps and heaps of recovery made. And you're going to have this crazy ass, like it's called a sarcomere, but it's just that sock that wraps around the muscle, and it's going to be quite hydrated, and you won't be able to walk down the stairs and all that sort of stuff because it really hurts. And all that pain's the fascia. There is no DOMS in muscle, it's DOFs. That's delayed onset fascia soreness. It's all fascia, okay? So you load up your collagen post-workout, you do your prototype 8 for the last 10 minutes, and then you do your no-to-way, and you load it all up, and you are going to get massive amounts of support for your collagen and everything else we need in regards to the estrogen. If you're a vegan, you do the same thing, except you use the essential amino acids instead of the no-whey. If you don't have a shaker, you use a no-whey bar. No-whey bars have got the same dose of body balance in every bar as what you'd get in a no-whey shaker. So next year is going to be this weird-ass thing because there's a group of people that have got exclusivity through Europe for these claims of collagen versus whey. So there's a whole heap of data that is just sitting in this bank waiting to get published as soon as these exclusive claims go. So next year, we're giving you the tip, next year all the new information regarding collagen's coming out. So you can wait for then, or you can believe me and then do it. No, and then get a head start on everyone else. But so that's the best way to build muscle. And the funny thing is the best way to burn fat is to build muscle. So we'll get on to the insulin stuff. Talk about more insulin sensitivity.
Sure. All right, well, insulin sensitivity is a key thing that medicine's been trying to crack for years, and natural medicine has been good at it for years. We know, for example, there are certain herbs that contain berberine, which change the gut microbiome to increase the bug in your gut called Akkermansia, which is very good. The gut right. No, but berberine.
We got a new one coming.
Yeah.
I'm excited. It's in capsules.
But there is a drug called metformin which does the same sort of thing, which increases the change of the gut microbiome to make you more insulin sensitivity. So insulin sensitivity is driven from the gut, a healthy gut microbiome. So that's the first step. Also, we can use things like chromium, magnesium, selenium, and that sort of thing, which can make insulin more sensitive. So making it more sensitive means that we can get more out of the insulin we've got. And you can also do fasted exercise and all these sorts of things. We're not touching on a lot of exercise tonight, but that's another way to get insulin to be working again. So there's lots of ways you can do to get insulin be more sensitive. And by getting your insulin working more effectively, you will get more out of your workouts, and you'll get not just fat loss, but muscle gain as well. And that'll really enhance your performance. And we should be talking about testosterone as well a little bit.
Not yet. You've got a better idea.
What?
Because you just tricked me. I know, I'm waffling.
Tricked you.
Stuff taught me, tricked me, something or other. Money. This is really weird, isn't it? What was I going to say? So with the gut's really fascinating because we learned so much about the gut now with this new research that's coming through. Forget the genetic stuff. We got bugger all genes in our body compared to the genes in our guts. How many? Tell some stats. You know, all right, numbers.
Some weird numbers for you. There is 100 trillion cells in your gut microbiome. There's 10 times more cells in your gut microbiome than there are cells in your body. And there's about 100 times more genetic matter in your gut microbiome than the genetic matter in your body. So can you change your genes? Every time you have a shit, you change your genes.
You're doing it wrong. No, you guys are supposed to take your jeans off before you take a shit, Steve. I just worked out his problem. He's always gone for ages to the toilet.
But I tell you, that's how you change your genes. People say you can't change your genes. Of course you can. You eat different food, you change. You eat an apple, you change your genes.
Speaking of that, every time you do have a shit, 20% of the dry matter of your poo, and if you want to know the dry matter of your poo, you've got to do this.
Yeah.
No, you don't. 20% of the dry matter of your poo is actually dead bugs that you can't hold inside you. Every day you've got an overflow of bugs going out. Now, inflammation, significant contributor to insulin resistance. So is stress, and Steve-O said it before too. If you've already got cells full of fuel, then you become insulin resistant because there's fuel in the cells. You've got to burn that first. That's the whole fasted cardio theory.
Absolutely.
So a lot of those factors can be linked to the gut. Now, understand, Steve-O just said 10 times as many gut bugs as there are whole cells of your whole body. So what do you reckon happens to your gut flora when you're preparing for your before photo? All right, so when you are bulking up your gut flora. Now, your gut flora, you're their host. They want you to survive, okay? And they think that they're doing the right thing by helping you to encourage you to eat all that food, because they will make you crave the foods that they love. Depending on what bugs live in your gut, they will crave the food that they love and they will share it with you, okay? It's not about you anymore. There's 10 times as many of them as there are of you. So they will take let you have some food. But they don't want to share it, you see. So they're looking about themselves, but they need to maintain it. Now, they also used to seasons and changing. So they're used to a fruit season, then when that sugar disappears, they're used to waiting up to 9 months for that sugar to come back. Now, if you prepare for a before photo, you're actually bulking up your cells, you're bulking up your gut flora. Most people, when we try to cut down some fat, we'll get the fats, right? We'll do good levels of fats. We'll try to match up our protein to our muscle mass and our how much work we're doing, and then we'll typically manipulate the carbohydrates to get you burning a bit more fat. So what happens, that's like fruit season ending. So the gut bugs don't die, they don't just disappear, they actually wait and lay dormant for cheat meal, and cheat meal's not like 6 months. Cheat meal, you might do a good week and then have a cheat meal, and these bugs come back. Now, what's interesting about that is these little bugs, they don't die. They just shoot eggs out and wait for the food to come back and just lay there and wait. You see it on Instagram. If I sacrifice and I don't do anything I love with my friends, I can contain a 6-pack. But if I have one thing, I'm pregnant. You know how you get that? They do that.
That's
one
the
weekend,
guys.
just this massive, and these are just the guys.
Yeah.
And they're like massive amount of bloating just from having a little cheat meal. So that's the gut bugs just going, you little ripper, we're all back. Fruit season's back. Now, the main cause of rebound weight gain is these little buggers wanting to get you back to where you were last fruit season when you're having all the sugars. So they're used to you changing, but they're determined to get you back to where they want you. Now, the way they do that is by not sharing their food as well. And they increase their calorie yield. So if you have a look at the different strains of bacteria that you get in the gut, there's a group called the Lactobacillus strain that we all see in the supplements, Lactobacillus plantarum and acidophilus. They're all in the milk and that sort of stuff. In our body, they're all found through my reproductive canal. No, not mine. But they're found through the reproductive tract, because as the baby goes head first through, it gets a mouthful of these bugs. They can increase the calorie yield from your food by about 20%, okay? They are designed for growth spurts, okay? So we are designed to get, when we're children, to get lots of lactobacillus and firmicute style bacteria through the birth canal. First ones in serve, they increase our calorie yield from our food by 20%. They significantly increase the risk of the thrifty gene. They're heavily involved. The smallest babies make the biggest adults. Because what happens is the catch-up weight gain and the gut bugs are all involved in this process. Now, how does a gut bug become dominant within a gut region? Is it starves off its competition. So a lot of these bugs then, what they do is they release poisons so the bugs near them don't feed on their favourite foods, which is sugar. Now, if I can measure that waste in your urine, it's gone from your gut all through your whole body and into your urine. Bacteria have got same energy pathways as us with the Krebs cycle. They use the same parts, the same little machinery to burn sugar as we do. So these buggers release poisonous chemicals to the neighbouring cells to stop them from stealing their sugar by making them resistant to the burning sugar, which creates an insulin resistance. So when we get those chemicals through us, we get insulin resistant. Also, I don't care if it's a good bacteria or a bad bacteria, their cell wall is made of this thing called lipopolysaccharide, which is the most inflammatory thing known to man. I say that all the time. That's a really big claim. I don't know if it is the most inflammatory thing known to man, but it's bloody inflammatory. Yeah. And what they do is, if I want to trigger anxiety in a study, I will get lipopolysaccharide and I'll irritate nerves with lipopolysaccharide, and you can trigger a panic attack and anxiety. If I want to trigger arthritis, I will put lipopolysaccharide into the joint of a rat, because I hate rats. You know, that's what we do as scientists. And then, so that's the sort of stuff. So lipopolysaccharide is the most inflammatory thing known to man. Has anyone heard of the term dysbiosis? It's a weird one. Naturopaths use it all the time. It's one of those big ass words. Most naturopaths don't know what it means. But what it means is too many of the wrong kind of bacteria. But the key feature is too many. Then what you're looking at is SIBO. Anyone heard of SIBO? That's the newest one that's coming out now. That's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, most of these are inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, they have too many gut bugs. So you've got too many. And the reason why is because we have a balanced diet, but not a varied diet. You know, so we find an apple and a banana that we like. I like the Kansas apples now. There was nice. A pink lady, and then I have the banana trees going constantly crazy. But anyway, we eat the same food all the time. We just find the same meat and veg, and you know, it's just very common. But we don't have proper breaks between the seasons. Again, why I think these. You know, when someone just goes, I've been eating the same way forever, and I'm going to try a keto system, and then it works. You know, and then we're going to go, no, I'm going to go clean, or I'm going to go vegan. We need to do regular changes, and you've got to work with these guys here, because they're the guys that are capable of knowing when you're having a win and when you may be plateauing off and when it's time to change. Because the whole muscle gain, fat loss thing, it's all an adaptation game. We just don't know when the adaptation's going to kick in. Hey?
Absolutely.
So anyone that's cutting carbs for the purpose of fat loss, while you're doing that, you need to use a product like Gut Right, because it kills off the bad bugs. You don't want them there. You can't kill the eggs. They don't eat. They just sit there and wait. They don't eat much, you know. So you got to throw the poisons down to get the bugs to eat it, and you got to kill off some of the load of, especially the firmicutes, while you're cutting your carbs and while you're doing a fat loss campaign, so it doesn't all come back. And that's that's probably the most valuable thing. If you, as part of a campaign, you keep doing that Gut Right, you're going to eliminate a lot of the inflammation, the insulin resistance, so much gut-derived stress, and that sort of stuff. And the Gut Right does it. It also wipes out things like Candida. Candida, firmicutes, other things like Clostridium and Klebsiella. They're mongrels for recycling estrogen. And when I talked about all the health benefits of estrogen before, that's estrogen when it first comes out and has a crack at your tissues. Then we want it to bugger off through your liver, get into your bowels and go. Certain bugs love it. They feed on it. They convert it into this form called 16-alpha-hydroxyestrogens and then liberate it, which creates cellulite, fluid retention, a lot of fluid around the lower back and lower abs. So very important to get the gut right. Did you get the gut right?
Yep. And then subliminal messaging, isn't it beautiful?
Gut right, gut right, gut. You keep talking, it's going to get gut right. And then, so the anabolic stuff is great to build the muscle. We've got the collagen, we've got the estrogen. The key is that for fat loss, you've got to change that metabolic profile by changing the gut and get it to work. Then, the other thing, when you cut calories, the first thing that is going to try to screw you is your thyroid. All right? So it is so important to make sure that your thyroid gland doesn't slow down. Steve-O,
love the thyroid.
Talk some stuff about
sure.
that.
The thyroid gland regulates your metabolism. So like we're all warm-blooded people and we have this basic metabolic rate that's going on. You can up that basal metabolic rate by varying your thyroid levels, okay? So when you're dieting, your body thinks you're starving, so your thyroid levels naturally drop. Okay, that's a natural body adaptation. So when you're in the bush and you can't find the food or whatever, your metabolism drops, so you live longer. We don't want that because there's plenty of food around. We're not going to starve to death. So what we need to do is when we're cutting or dieting or doing something, we need to maintain thyroid levels. And luckily, you know, ATP Science has T432, which is a beautiful product for normalizing thyroid function. And the thyroid is a tricky one because you've got a few hormones that are released there. And there's T4, T3, T2, TSH, all these T things. It doesn't matter, you need them in balance. Unfortunately, if you've ever gone to a doctor and had your thyroid checked, they'll typically check a non-thyroid hormone called TSH. Have you heard of that? Thyroid stimulating hormone. And that's not a thyroid hormone. T3 and T2 are the active ones, T4 is non-active. And T432 makes sure you make most of your active hormones. So it's quite a good one to keep yourself looking lean and looking good and also feeling good. Depression is associated with low thyroid. PCOS is too. Lots of diseases are.
So what's crazy about it is weird estrogen metabolite ratios, dodgy thyroid, inflammation and gut microbiome. They're the main causes of the insulin resistance that may stop someone from building muscle and another person from burning fat. So we need to kind of have a thing that works on all of that. Now, what's kind of crazy about it, we designed T432 for thyroid support, but the ingredients in it, when we tried to create a product for insulin resistance, they were already in the T432. So all the cinnamons and that sort of stuff are the best way. So T432 Plus will also improve insulin sensitivity as well as supporting thyroid hormone production. Then the last thing was when I went to make Bloody Gut Right, and I wanted to look at all the different, what's the most powerful herbs in regards to killing off the firmicutes and supporting metabolism, they were already in the T432 as well, which was the pomegranates, the yerba mates and that sort of stuff. So it's kind of cool how nature works. You kind of, all the research in the olden days for those herbs was all thyroid, and then as they learn something new, you realise that this big vicious cycle that we all get stuck in, nature's provided a series of tools that can actually help to break that cycle, and a little bit on each at the end, the gut, the insulin and the thyroid, and it just keeps that working around. So using T432 along with the Gut Right as part of a fat loss campaign is going to do the gut, it's going to stop the thyroid from shutting you down, and it's going to keep that metabolism cranking, and then you just basically do the prototype 8s and the no ways and that sort of stuff around your training to build the extra muscle. And then I kind of think we've run out of time. I spent a lot of time waffling tonight. But we're going to do a lot of questions.
We are. We also love things like subcut and those sort of things, which are cheating. You just basically rub it on your little fat bits, go for a run, and it'll help.
You do all the other stuff first, though. Like so I've recently been on a campaign. I've lost about 20 kilos, awesome. And it's all visceral. And now I'm only just allowing myself to start onto the subcuts and everything now. So this is a big point. A subcut is going to move fat from storage into the bloodstream, that sort of stuff, so you're capable of burning it. But if you've got visceral fat, you get rid of all that first because it's already there and easy to burn.
That's the fat under the stomach muscles.
Visceral fat's deep inside your gut, where you get lots of blood supply, and it responds to diet and exercise and supplementation really easily. So you get rid of all that first. There's no point targeting these isolated pockets until they become those isolated pockets, and they're just stubborn, and then you get really fast results. And it's really cool when you use a subcut because after about a week or two, it starts to feel like bubble wrap popping
it gets
under.
soft,
It gets all like bubbly, and you start popping all these little fat under the skin. It's kind of crazy weird, but it works. And Block E3 is cool because we talked before about using estrogen to build your muscle, but estrogen also builds fat. So the ideal scenario is to have something that can target the estrogen in the fat without touching the muscles. So Block E3 contains this fat-soluble compound called chrysin. Chrysin's got almost exactly the same shape as testosterone. So when the fat cells suck it in, the fat cells have got these enzymes that convert testosterone to estrogen, and chrysin comes in and they think it's testosterone, and it tries to suck it through this aromatase enzyme, and it just jams it up and it can't get through. So then the testosterone backlogs and the estrogen drops. So if anyone's got weird isolated pockets, and with estrogen you get, it's like really isolated compartments, and your body has no idea that it's even there, so you'll have these weird, and it'll come on when you add the pill or you put on weight or something, then you lose fat and your body has no idea that you've got this weird ass cold cushion sitting over here, just this little estrogen reservoir. It's also very common in people with cystic ovaries, even though it's an estrogen issue. So Block E3 on the weird isolated pockets, subcut you can just butter up everywhere, and then we're going to talk about Prototype 8, where to put that.
No. We talked about it before off camera, and now we've got a camera, so we've got to be G-rated. But what you can do is you can ask about it in a question time that we've got on now. So then we have to answer the question, don't we?
So, Steve, where do you rub your prototype?
I'm 50 and married to a 40-year-old. No, we won't go there.
Sorry, where does he rub the prototype? Sorry.
I think we've got to take questions from, the 100-odd people here. So if you've got any questions, please put your hand up. We've got to two off the back quickly then.
We're going.
Where do I put my prototype?
On Steve's old fella. Or the little man in the boat. It's a thing.
Any other
From the
questions?
side. looks like that.
Hang on, not about prototype A, is it? No.
Just with the thyroid with the T432, is that designed to actually replace L-troxin or thyrosin?
No.
Take it alongside.
Yeah,
Good question.
great question, because we should have probably said that too.
Yes.
You were much smarter. That's what,
Yeah.
So the question was, is this used in replacement to thyroid hormone? And of course not. But what happens is some people have had Hashimoto's or something, autoimmune, where they've actually lost a section of the thyroid. They then take a thyroid medicine. Typically they got large jumps between the doses of the thyroid medicine. So what we'll find is people struggle to get that right dose. Do I take 100 micrograms or 150? They're like big jumps. So what people do often is they'll take the lower dose and then use that T432 to get them up into that window. And you can use a symptom picture. Go to our webpage and type in thyroid and stuff, and you get like, I'm assuming that's what you'd type in, but probably. And then we have all the symptom pictures that show you when it's fast and when it's slow. And also you can take your body temperature. Your body should sit at about 36.8. So if we're sitting constantly cold and you've got the cold hands and the drier skin and losing the outside third of the eyebrow and getting dry hair and flaky nails and all these weird symptoms of a sluggish thyroid, then you can take a couple of T432 to pick it up, and you got more control over your symptoms and that sort of stuff then. But because it isn't actually thyroid hormone, and if you've lost the ability to make thyroid hormone, you've got to put it in. And then we just use the T4 to control the conversion pathways.
Yeah, because Eroxin, which is the drug, thyroxin, is T4. So you have to activate or deiodinase it to T3 and T2, and that's what T432 does beautifully. So they're great to work together.
Yep, and zinc and seleniums and those sort of things are really important as well. And there's a couple of things that will slow down the thyroid, like mega doses of green tea sometimes can actually inhibit the thyroid. And there's a couple of other little weird, soy was another one. So soy, gluten, green, and mega green tea. And when I say mega green tea, you can't do it through green tea. I'm talking about just these EGCG they found when they did it really high, it could slow down the thyroid, mega doses of that. Which I can't even think of what that mega dose would be. Anyway, let's have another question. Anyone else got a question?
Young lass on this thing.
A lass, young lass. You just picked up on his accent. Now you're calling him a young lass.
Young lassie. Young lassie.
Yes, young lassie. Oh, that's another great question. So
Yeah.
what's the best diet for insulin resistance? It's a tricky one because you will adapt. So the best diet will change with the seasons. But a really cool strategy that I picked up from some of the bodybuilders and the bodybuilding coaches that I was working with at ATP was when nothing was working, we just flipped everything. Okay, so one of the best strategies that I've ever seen is actually get up in the morning and clearing the glycogen. Okay, so meaning before you do anything, you just burn the sugar out of your muscles. So whether that's just you need a certain amount of intensity to burn the glycogen, but basically get up and move. All right, get that glycogen moving, clear the sugar out and the fat out of the liver and the sugar out of the mitochondria, and then you are insulin sensitive. Okay, once you're in a glycogen deficit, you stay insulin sensitive until you replenish that glycogen. Meaning once you've depleted the sugar, until your sugar's topped back up, your body wants more sugar. So don't give it to it all day. Okay, so what you do is you empty some sugar, and then what you do is you stay in a carbohydrate deficit all day to stay low glycogen all day, so that way you stay insulin sensitive the whole time you're having most of your meals, and then your last meal of the day you can have all your carbs. And that's like almost the opposite to what they'll tell us to do to be healthy. But if the last meal of the day is all your carbs, then you'll get a big spike of insulin then, but it's only once in the day. The problem with insulin sensitivity, you get up in the morning, you've already got sugar in your bloodstream, you're probably burning fat anyway, and then we have a bit of sugar and the insulin comes up. And then you're doing a day all day with insulin up and down. But if you go relatively low carb, high protein, high fat all day and stay in a glycogen deficit, then reload your carbs at night, you get a massive serotonin release, you've got good blood sugar, you have a really nice deep sleep, you wake up in the morning with some glycogen in your muscles to start the process again, and you've managed to pull off 20 hours with no insulin, and that's the best strategy for insulin sensitivity. With anything you're resistant to, you just got to have a break from it, and then the body starts wanting it again. But yeah, that's the best strategy that I've ever seen work, especially in anyone that's really stuck. Even anyone that's not, polycystic ovarian, but they might be getting raised blood sugar levels on their, come in and say, oh, the blood test, the doctor said I'm a bit worried about your sugars or something, you know. So those people need to get up and clear the sugar out of the way before you even start eating, you know, just to get those things moving. But have you seen anything? Otherwise, they do the normal low GI sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah, low GI is not a really good idea because if you have oats for breakfast, it'll drip feed sugar in your bloodstream all day. You don't want that. We've also got to get rid of the remaining triglycerides or fats in your blood too. So Matt's right with the fasted exercise is terrific as well. So, you know, low carbohydrate diet for pretty much most of the day is usually the best way to go. Of course, there's great supplements like gut right, and there's, of course, T432 is probably my favourite for insulin resistance too. So think of supplementing and adding those things to your food, like the cinnamons and those sorts of things to your actual diet, because food is medicine.
And have a look at, turn that T432 around. It's basically cinnamons, pomegranates, and yerba mates. And yerba mate tea is really nice. Like, you can just sip on yerba mate tea most of the day, and it really does help improve insulin sensitivity. Throw cinnamons and that sort of stuff in it. Yeah, look into those things, you know.
Well, it's a good question too. Gentlemen, huh?
Obviously, the ATP science products are really good, and you guys have done a lot of work trying to get access to the best herbs and spices and Chinese spices. But to the everyday sort of Australian, if we want to top up on something like your Schisandra berries, these things are really hard to like source or control the quality of. And you guys are often talking about some teas that you recommend having as well. How do we find a good quality Schisandra berry somewhere?
That's a really good question. It's so bloody hard. So in its natural form, and it's kind of crazy, in the natural form, it's actually easier to see. If it looks awesome, it's probably shit. Because the reality is that the water and the hydration is actually what makes it weak. So the worst thing that can happen to us, I'll never forget this multi-food. You know, we were getting ready for this multi-food, everything, because we have to plan 9 months in advance to actually for multi-food raw material, because we've got to grow the stuff on the farm. So you've got to plan it all and do all that sort of stuff. Just before harvest, they had a big rain, and everything just looked amazing. You know, everything just got beautifully and fat and lush. Weak as piss. Everything come out so diluted with water that we just like sitting there trying to concentrate it. So with a herbal extract, so when you see a herbal extract like a powder and that sort of stuff, you have no way of knowing. You have to send it away for testing, and they have to do all of the different testing, you know, proper testing for species identification as well as actives, and you have to test that. If you see a berry, you know, we've got an idea, but you can kind of tell by the flavour, the intensity of the flavour. For example, Schisandra berries is a good example. Schisandra berries looks like a little peppercorn. It's known as the 5 flavours fruit because it's a combination of the 5 flavours. List off 5 flavours, Stevie. It's good with numbers.
Salt, sweet.
Oh, you go throw a fucking umami. He starts with umami.
Well,
That's actually one of the 5, but he just likes his big words. Forget Steve and his big words. So I buy my Schisandra berries from herbwholesalers.com, by the way. That's where I get my... there's a company called herbwholesalers.com in Brisbane. They just do normal, boring herbal teas. You just, as long as you're prepared to buy it in half a kilo, that's where I buy mine. But you kind of get some batches are stronger than others, and you just kind of only go by the flavour. Otherwise, you've got to send stuff off for testing. We do all of our testing at Southern Cross Plant Sciences because that's an independent place that does all the TGA testing, so we can get everything ready for that. And an important thing we do as well is we do this thing called HPLC testing for the species. And HPLC means that it'll tell us exactly how much of that plant is in the powder. TLC is what a lot of people do, and it'll say, is it there or isn't it? And then so they go, yes, to TLC, it's there, but it might be at 1%, might be 100%, you'd never know. HPLC will tell you exactly how much of it's there and how much of it's fillers. And this is one of the reasons why you won't see us using many trademarked blends. Because when you get a trademarked material, that's their own proprietary blend. They got all their own secrets, and they won't disclose what percentage of the herb it is, or they won't disclose anything. They got all these secrets, and then they say, but you got to keep our secrets if you want to use our marketing material. So then we just go, no, we just want to know what the bloody hell's in your powder, you know? So that's why we don't have many trademarked materials, not many of them. Like KSM 66 or something is like a famous ashwagandha 5 years ago, and now it's a laughing stock of the trade shows because they refused to let anyone test it, and people got the shits and went and tested it anyway. They just said, we won't tell anyone, we just want to know. They went and tested it. Turned out to be sometimes it was just dodgy. They were just spiking it up with actives, but it was famous as the most potent Withania ashwagandha on the market, and it was like a load of shit. So that's a problem. You don't really know, but that's why we test absolutely everything, and we don't even pretend to know. We look at the paperwork. The paperwork comes in stupid shit. So brownie yellow or brown yellow. No, it looks brown yellow. I'm red green colourblind too, by the way. So I'm like, I don't know. So they're the sort of things that you see. So you've got to send off for testing, or you just don't know. Otherwise, you just got to have a crack and go by taste, but get the whole things. Always get whole. If you're not sure, if you're going to get extracts and powders for bulk production, then you've got to test them. Yeah, so.
Absolutely.
There's a question over there.
Oh, yeah, question?
Why didn't you encapsulate the gut right?
Oh, it's coming in capsules.
I'm going to tell you this. I don't think anyone.
I normally gag.
Is anyone here from TGA, by the way? No, I'll tell you the story then. This dickhead from TGA walked into a bar. No, so we got in a bit of trouble. So there's this thing in Australia called Therapeutic Goods Administration. And Australia is what we call a police.
A self-policed sort of industry where it relies on complaints from your competitors to shut you down. And we got a lot of them. So we got a lot of complaints from competitors. And what that meant is TGA was saying we couldn't.
So you're allowed to put food in capsules. You always can, ever since
Tic Tacs and Mentos, and everyone said you can't tell us that tablets and lozenges and capsules are therapeutic goods because that's what our lollies are. So they went and had this big argument, and then they said, no, you're right to it. But they decided to crack down on us and say anything of ours that in a capsule, they're going to try to send us to jail for if we want to say anything. So that happened just as we launched Gut Right. And so just as we're doing the Gut Right, all of a sudden we're like, oh shit, so we can't do Gut Right in the capsules. So we had to do it as the powder. Powder still works better for the Gut Right, of course, but it's not as easy to take every day when it tastes like that. So that's been our challenge. So now, what we've done is this crazy ass strategy. We're going to have Gut Right powder that you've got now, because it's saved. If we ever took that off the market now, we would be shot. The testimonials and the lives that we've changed through that product, we can't take it off. We're going to capsulate it anyway, just for you. All right. So if anyone asks why didn't you capsulate it earlier, we said, well, we only just heard about it. So it's coming out in capsules soon because they've kind of backed off a bit, because we're also doing a TGA version of Gut Right. And then that way we can put the berberines and stuff in it that Steve-O was talking about. So we've got some new cool stuff coming out. So there's going to be a concentrated Gut Right coming out. We've got the original Gangster that you have now into capsules, and it's still going to start as the original. And I just want to keep doing more and more with it because we're learning so much. I now want to do parasite blends. I want to do everything. But
Gee, encapsulating parasites, I don't know if that'd sell well, will it? Putting parasites in capsules?
That's called a probiotic.
Probiotic?
It's got a pro-parasitic.
Actually, there were worming tablets.
Would it be a probiotic if you put a live parasite in?
Well, they used to. There was Dr. Someone's worming tablets for weight loss in the 1930s were marketed through medicine.
Dr. Someone? That sounds bullshit, Steve.
It was a 1930 supplement.
I believe the 1930. It was the Dr. Someone that I was suspicious of.
I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it was some Dr. Someone's weight loss capsules for women, and it just had live tapeworms in it. It worked. Don't laugh. It worked. You lost a lot of weight.
Did 9 out of 10 doctors make camel?
There's some dodgy medicine in the 30s.
So what other questions we got? I know I saw a hand here. Yeah.
Sticking with probiotics and gut.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for someone after antibiotics?
Yeah, cool. Good question. So after, and also during, you can do this. What you want to do is a Saccharomyces boulardii. All right. Saccharomyces boulardii is actually a probiotic yeast, and it directly competes with Candida and Clostridiums that actually come up with the antibiotics. So you can do that during it, and because it's a yeast, the antibiotics aren't wasted killing that like they would be if you took a probiotic, because you're putting an antibiotic and probiotic in the stomach together, they're kind of wasting each other. But if you do an SB, you can do that the whole way. Also, SB doesn't technically need to be refrigerated, so it's also a good one if you're traveling and all that sort of stuff. SB goes really well with the Gut Right as well, because it actually, Saccharomyces boulardii is excellent. It's brewer's yeast, by the way. That's the old brewer's yeast, baker's yeast. There is so much going to come out of Saccharomyces boulardii in the future, like so much. For example, they've just discovered that it contains a group of enzymes such as delta-15 desaturase, and it can convert oleic acid from olive oils into EPA from fish oil. And like we're talking about the Mediterranean peroxide, we're trying to work it out and all that sort of stuff. We're talking about, if this is true, then there may not be such thing as essential fatty acids. Because if we are capable of making those particular oils out of our gut microbiome by eating something totally different, then that's phenomenal, because that could actually explain the whole Mediterranean paradox, because that's where they used to dip olive oil into their properly made brewed bread and their properly brewed alcohol that had both Saccharomyces boulardii and the bloody olive oil, and they were converting and fixing heart disease, diabetes and brain stuff.
We are absolute nerds, and we read papers all day, and we were obsessed by that paper.
Oh.
We just couldn't believe we found this link. Who
No.
else gets excited
and we don't
Delta
just get
15?
excited about it. I mean, we do, and then we interrupt each other. No, but we go then to the universities and go, guess what we discovered? And they go, oh, yeah, that paper that old mate wrote. And we know, well, no, we discovered it because we read it in this bloke's paper. And then, and we go take to them. So we're actually doing we're at this thing called GRID, which is the Griffith Research Industry for Drug Development, and pharmaceutical companies had that for the last decade, and now they've given that to us, and we can actually then go and screen all these Australian plants and that sort of stuff. We've done a project. We have just been the first people in the whole world. This is a new patent. It's going to be announced on the news one day, but we created a proper technique to actually measure natural levels of folates in plants. And actually in that process, we discovered a whole brand new way of extracting full natural forms of folate directly from plants. And actually we're the first people to ever be able to do this in the world. And everyone else that thought they were doing it was wrong. Because we've managed to be able to test all this, and now with the new technology showing, oh shit guys, you were close, but you missed. You got the wrong form of folates and stuff out there. You've actually converted it in the process. So we've been able to go back and do all this sort of stuff. But the coolest thing is the next phase of the project, as we went back and said, well, these Saccharomyces boulardii, do we have some potential to see what enzymes are in there to create this stuff? So we're actually now running through a process where we are creating our own all-natural plant-based nutrients using all natural, non-GMO, original strains of yeast that were used in other forms of fermentation. It's like so cool, man. So we're going to have all of these nutrients available for us all in the future.
Well, just to answer your question.
Oh, is there a question? I was just telling a story.
Yeah, that is a great story. But what I'm guilty of, and maybe Matt is, in the olden days, if someone had antibiotics, we would just say, oh, you need now, which bug is it? Lactobacillus acidophilus. And there was just one bug out of the 1,700 that are in there. We don't know why we used to just give one bug out of the 700. We now know that's a mistake. And still to this very day, Lactobacillus acidophilus is very widely sold. And I do not now understand why people think that's the only one of the 1,700 they need and not another one like Saccharomyces or any of the others. So it's very strange to me that the probiotic market is still as big as what it should be, because the research is indicating otherwise.
Oh, the research has gone fully the other way, because the definition of a probiotic is something that confers health benefits to the host, which is you guys, by these bugs living inside you and doing things. And now they're freaking out because they've realised they don't live inside you. They pretty much go straight through, and the whole definition they're going to have might change or come up with something else.
Very interesting.
It's gone very strange. This genetic. We had 10 years of gene research and then 10 years of microbiome research, and so the gene research in us, for us through natural phases of evolution, it could take 100,000 years to totally change our genetic profile. Bugs can do that in a day, and there's how many more of them? The genetic material?
There's 100 times more genetic material.
Yeah, see, and that can change in a day, and our genetic material takes generations to change. So when they went through that era where everyone's measuring their genes and looking for gene defects, and then going, oh, we got to take these special activated vitamins because I got this gene defect. Then they realised that didn't work, and then they realised, actually, geez, we've always had these gene defects. That's actually how we survive. They're benefits. They're not defects. And it never really mattered until we tried to get all our nutrients out of synthetic multivitamins, where we used to just eat food. And then we didn't know about these genetic polymorphisms when we ate food.
Because it didn't matter.
Any other questions? I just seem to be waffling rubbish here.
She's jumping up the back.
Oh, okay. She's jumping. You're just sitting there. You go. Yeah. Oh, shit.
Resilience.
Never even heard that.
No, I'm just trying to think why it could.
Well, I can think of some reasons why it would. Because if you're looking at Hashimoto's as T-alpha-1 dominant cytokines.
It's an autoimmune disease for your thyroid, for those who don't know what
So
Hashimoto's is.
if the Hashimoto's antibodies are inhibiting, they're putting a handbrake on the thyroid. They're also destroying the tissue, but they also have some effects on that thyroid peroxidase and lower the amount of thyroid hormones. The moment you suppress that immune system a little bit with resilience, you get that immune system back under control, then you're going to have possibly rebound from the other.
Thyroid goes up.
Because don't forget, you always have the
good.
Graves, and you'll have a combination of antibodies.
Yeah.
I dare say to be around the immune system.
Yeah, it normalates the
be-
immune system, so the thyroid works better.
I'm trying to work out how to. Yeah. Well, it does have a very powerful effect of lowering the effect of the immune. So with our immune system being like a seesaw, and one side is cellular immunity, the other one humoral. So that side's Hashimoto's, and if it pushes it down like that, then it goes the other way towards the Graves, and it'll run faster. So, and we do it through the things, through the things.
I love that feedback.
Cytokines. Yeah, that's good though. I never. You got to send that. Did you send that in to us? Never. You got to send that stuff through because and then me and Steve will get weird about it and read about it.
Yeah,
and
we'll
that.
find out.
But otherwise, we don't know.
Now, this lady didn't jump before.
No, she didn't, but she's very
put her hand
patient.
up.
Yeah. Now, what's your question? Oh, gut right, yeah. So what I did, this is a sneaky thing. So I personally wanted to do estrogen detoxification, but I didn't really want to screw around with my menstrual cycle. So what I did is I took the same estrogen detoxification stuff out of the Venus and Prime and I threw it in the gut right. The whole plan is, if you see it, we got the 4 pillars and then we got the other products. So the whole concept is between the 4 pillars, which is multi-food, Orum oil, which is all the essential fatty acids from plants, gut right and resilience. If you just did those 4 things, then pretty much most things through anti-inflammatory, nutritional support, over time you're going to come good. But because we only just met, you've probably been out of whack for a while. So we made the Alpha Venus and Prime. So the Venus to bring you back estrogen dominance but boost progesterone. The Prime is to get rid of the estrogen dominance but increase testosterone activity. The Alpha Mars is to build up all hormones when you're in a hormone deficit. But once you're symptom free, once your menstrual cycle's good, once your hormones are right, once you've achieved those sort of things, you can come off those products and just maintain it all with the 4 pillars. So I specifically made sure the combination of the multi-food and gut right had everything that you were getting out of the Venus and everything to detoxify. So, but then when I look at the T432, that stuff's also in the gut right. So you can use the T432 to force that thyroid to go faster, be more aggressive with your insulin sensitivity. But then once you've achieved and you're into that state of wellness, which is the absence of symptoms, you don't need to keep managing that. You can then stop that force. You don't have to treat it so aggressively and then just maintain it with those 4 pillars and then you'll stay good. But like I said, if all else fails, you just put everyone on the 4 pillars, we'll come good. But it just takes a while. You might as well force stuff to happen faster and bring those hormones back into line once you're good. And this is symptom. I talk a lot about symptoms because the doctors don't ask the symptoms. They look at a blood test, but you know the symptoms for the blood test. And you got to know your symptoms because people forget. You got no idea, man. In the naturopath clinic, hey, some people come in and they tell me, like, I hate it. My life is terrible. I have these headaches every day. I wet the bed every night. They list off. This is Steve's consult. I'm just trying to remember. So
just telling him before.
He's had all these problems. Anyway, they come back a couple of weeks later and you say, how do you feel? And they said, not too much different. I said, okay, cool. Let's go through your file. So you still wet the bed every night? Actually, no, I haven't done that. Any headaches? Actually, I haven't had a headache since I was here last. 2 weeks ago, they were going to kill themselves over these symptoms. It was like devastating, ruining their life. 2 weeks later, they totally bloody forgot. And so recording your symptoms is really important because you want to know when they've disappeared and when you've fixed it and what's not fixed. And that's because then I go in the clinic and I go, okay, so something's not right. What are you judging our success by here? And they go, I'm just still so tired. And so, okay, cool, let's work on fatigue. You know what I mean? So it's really important to keep an eye on those symptoms because you don't know when you don't need the products. You don't need this stuff forever. The stuff actually works. So you force change and then you just got to maintain it with good lifestyle. And the problem is the reason why we have the 4 pillars, because even if you do a perfect bloody lifestyle, our food has changed so much. We don't have the polyphenols and all those astringent stuff, which is why we made the gut right, because all that stuff's gone from the food. Even if you go organic, you get the seedless grapes and all that sort of stuff, So we've lost all that bitter astringent stuff that's normally found in our food. So gut right's there for that. We've lost the vitamins and minerals in our food, so multi-food is just that plant matter from the farm that we test and put into a powder, and it's every time you just get vitamins from plants because they farm properly. Oil oils are essential oils that are missing from our diet because we're not eating a big enough variety of bits and pieces. What's the fourth one? Oh, resilience. And the resilience is just cheating because it's good anti-inflammatory, good antioxidant, resets that liver. So they're things that you can't do if you're just eating normal, you know, so that's why we made it to compensate for modern life. But the other stuff is to actually fix problems. So, yeah.
That's excellent. Do we have any other questions? Yes, go on.
Yeah.
If you use subcut and multi-fruit together,
Yep.
it doesn't matter which one you rather compress?
Nah, not really. I always used to say block E3 and that. Block E3 is a little bit better with the penetration enhancers. So, but also the reason why I say block E3 first is because block E3 only really works on that estrogen dominant stuff. So block E3 you're a bit more specific with. So if you've got an actual pocket or something there or some stubborn area, really get the block E3 into there, and then you can go over the top with subcut. It's really hard after you butter it with subcut to then isolate that pocket. But I talk about that all the time, and then I'll even see these people 2 days later and they just splat everything in their hand and just go. So it doesn't really matter. It still works. It's just if you're tight as a fish's ass like me and you don't want to waste product and you just make it last ages, then that's what I do.
Fish's ass. Okay.
Tight as a fish's ass.
Yeah,
They
I'll
don't
just
leak
make a
water,
note of that.
Steve.
Yeah. I'll make a mental note of that. No, that's
Very tight.
excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because prototype 8's a very good vasodilator. And so as soon as it hits in there, it dilates those blood vessels. So that will definitely help. In saying that, we don't really want subcut delivered everywhere. So having a slower, the way subcut works, all the active ingredients actually run down the shaft in the hair follicle and sit in the base of the sweat gland, sit in the base of the hair follicles where we've got a fair decent blood supply that leaches into the subcutaneous fat layers. So that's why it's kind of cool to have almost a slow release effect from the subcut, because you really want it in that subcutaneous tissue, which starts less than a couple of mils beneath the skin, right in the base of the hair follicle. So you one thing to kind of get faster delivery through the skin, but if it's just going into your arteries, then you're going to deliver those fat burning compounds through the body, and that would be the same as just taking them orally. And a lot of those same compounds are in T432+, and that's why we made them, because we know that the oral stuff access this visceral fat really easily. When you take oral supplements, it just doesn't get to these bits because they're in cold to touch, they get poor circulation. It's just, and things like forskolin, for example, it mimics thyroid hormone, the way it works. So it actually mimics thyroid hormone. And if you get too fast a thyroid, you get the runs. So if you take too much of the T432, too much forskolin, the dose of forskolin you would need to get from your stomach to your love handle, you shit yourself. Steve, he's had to change his jeans. Change some jeans.
Yeah, it's big on Steve
every day. Yeah. At least I can't do it when I do it with Elisma. I go,
Yes.
it's like a girl.
I don't want to pick on him. God. Well, let's change the topic quick. Any other questions? Lady up the back.
Very fast.
Yeah.
If you have a history of PFAS and you take the alcohol like take 2 in the morning and it's fine, and you take 2 in the afternoon and you start feeling like super dozy, almost high.
Yeah. It is so that's dopamine effect, okay? So Vitex also has a great reputation for fixing man boobs and that because it inhibits prolactin, a massive release of dopamine. So when you have Vitex, because we tell people if your menstrual cycles are regular, like if you're getting your periods every 2 weeks, we tell people to have all 4 at once in the morning. And we usually tell them to kind of don't maybe do that all at once tomorrow morning, maybe go build up 2 and 2 and then build it up, because otherwise you get exactly that feeling. So Vitex is a very powerful dopamine release. Now, what you're feeling there is what they talk about with nootropics. So when you see the nootropics, they always talk about dopamine release. Yeah, so it can make you feel really weird and spewy and strange. So that whole nootropic dopamine angle, you need to have a lot more compounds with it. I'm just only telling you that because everyone now's doing these, talking about nootropics, and it's all about dopamine. The most powerful thing out there that you can use for a dopamine surge is Vitex. And no one that takes Venus goes, oh my gosh, I am a genius. I'm now nootropicked up all day. So nootropics are these smart drugs sort of thing, but dopamine's not that. Yeah.
No, that's excellent. Yeah, it's a good one. Yep.
How much influence too much? Like,
Well, same when you shit yourself. So, Steve?
Yeah, well, I've shit myself. Well, it depends
It's
on
to do
what
with
you do.
magnesium.
so if I do a CrossFit competition, I'm doing 5 workouts in a day and I take 1 scoop before every workout.
Yeah. It depends on your magnesium. It's more or less to do with the magnesium. So with it, so we've got a couple of 100 milligrams of magnesium per serve. So, yeah, a couple of 100 milligrams of magnesium per serve. That's about 1 serve. Some people can tolerate 2 serves at once, but that's if they're magnesium deficient. So you're probably right to do a big full serve and then maybe even half serves throughout the day, just to keep, because 200 milligrams of magnesium is usually okay to do 3 or 4 times a day without giving the green apple splatters. So I think that should be right. So you just look for that serve, but yeah, it should be all right. I mean, Brandon Swan the other year when he went over, he had to do that. They surprised him with a rowing event. He had to do like a 25k row or something, and something stupid. Yeah, and he did he filled up his camel pack with infrared. So he had it sipping constantly the whole way, and he had other people bring him water every once in a while, but that was going constantly. James Newbury now does it, and he has a serve of infrared before each heat. He doesn't seem to have a problem, but yeah, it's going to be to do with your tolerance. So, I mean, if you run out of skin if you have too much beta-alanine and it prickles, it gives you that prickles, that would drive you crazy.
Help your
The
performance.
carbs you're going to burn. The magnesium's going to give you the squirts. Citrulline's never going to hurt you if you take too much citrulline. There's 3 grams of citrulline, so even if you took about 12 to 18 grams of citrulline, it's no big deal because it's just going to backlog and hold on as glutamines and that sort of stuff. So that's all right. It's all to do with the magnesium. If it gives you the runs, you don't want to do that.
Awesome.
Unless you're winning the race. They're winning the bike leg.
Yeah, you just don't want to be coming behind someone who's got the runs. That's the problem.
You're disgusting, Steve.
You can lead the run, that's fine.
He's been absolutely filthy today. He was swearing in the car park and
I
everything.
dropped the shit word, tonight.
Drop the shit word, Steve.
Oh shit, we've got another
At least
question.
take your jeans off this time first.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think. Have we, one more question. The big boss man. Yeah, I am. Oh, and it's fucking awesome. So,
F-bomb, do you hear that?
oh yeah, but you've started. You've taken it to the gutter.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you something crazy. The guy, Rich Kreider, who's the guy that was I don't know what. Anyway, he's had a lot to do with creatine. So he was the guy that did the GRAS certification. He worked out all the dosing creatine. He's like relatively famous in certain circles. He was working on a project and we become mates. Oh, fucking funny way we become mates. I was sitting in a bar. I went into a bar in Vegas and ordered a whiskey sour. I went to a Mexican bar in Las Vegas and ordered a Texan drink, apparently, a whiskey sours. And then I drank it, I thought it was horrible. And this bloke at the end of the bar, Richard Kreider, I didn't know his name at the time, and he says to me, oh, an Australian walks in, and he said, this is like a joke, an Australian walks in a Mexican bar.
And I said, and what's your name? And he says, Richard Kreider. And I said, so an American with the name of Dick Ryder is given an Australian shit at a bar. And then we got best mates. So Richard Kreider, Dick Ryder. No, I said, do people call you
Kreider? He's got no one. No. I thought, oh. So then we started talking, and it turns out that he was the godfather of creatine, and I was interested in it. And then we become mates, and then we chat all the time. Anyway, he was telling me about his nootropic invention. I found a problem with it, and I also knew the solution and told him. He went and tested it, and I was right. He's then contacted us saying, well, now it's your invention. And the best thing about it's really cool because we're doing a trial right now at the Texas University on NFL, not NFL, what's that, Gridiron's NFL, isn't it?
Yeah.
They got the most active, and
National
military.
Football League.
So, and what we've actually discovered is our nootropic is extremely powerful at preventing concussion and post-traumatic stress disorder. Then what happened is we got hit up, the guy Diego that does the cluster training, called me up and asked me to come and see him in Colombia. Because Richard's like all excited, hey, this is your invention, this is yours, go see my friend in Colombia. And then I'm like, I'm not going to fucking Colombia. and I was just joking, do I need to take bodyguards? And he says 2. And I said, why'd you say 2? And he says, well, if you take 4, they think you're rich. And if you take 1, it's not enough. And I was just like, yeah, and I was, yeah. And he said, no, seriously. I said, oh. So I'm not going to Colombia. the biggest soccer team in the world is in Colombia. They are the feeder club for their smaller club, FC Barcelona. So then I got invited. Now I'm going to go to FC Barcelona and do the trial because I said, no way, I'm going to fucking Colombia. So, and how cool is that? So that at the end of the day, we're going to have a nootropic. It's going to have the studies done on the American military and the American gridiron dudes for all the concussions and all that sort of stuff. And then we're going to go do one with Barcelona. Because they were actually considering banning the headers in soccer. So because there's too many concussions, too many people getting too much damage, and especially the kids. And so they're actually trying to work out how the hell are we going to fix all this in the kids in soccer because they kept getting concussion from hitting a ball. So yeah, how cool is that, man? So yeah, we're doing a nootropic and it's fucking awesome. So we've been playing around with it and it's good fun. Honestly, when I'm going along and you just get tired, I'm okay if I print stuff off and I can read it, but trying to read on computer and I just start go a bit weird. So I go and have a thing of this and all your eye, it just actually fixes your eyes up and that sort of stuff. Everything goes clear again. Yeah. You can see
it's better than
sound.
the white powder we were talking about earlier anyway, and legal. There's 2 questions. This lady on the stairs.
Have we got time for another one, Topple? Yeah, do it anyway. Who's you? What? Steve, you pick.
Oh, this.
No. Oh,
Let's
you've
just
gone
stick
totally
on
different part of the
ATP
house.
shirt.
Okay, yeah, ATP shirt, you win.
Yeah.
Well, it's the funny thing is it's initially I made it for like athletes and gamers and that sort of stuff, and for people that are studying. But at the end of the day, now it's going to come out as something for concussion and dementia and Alzheimer's and that sort of stuff. So, don't know. Hopefully, everyone buys 2.
It's not just a pre-workout stimulant. This is the difference.
But it's just turned into something totally different,
Yeah.
like where it started. And then when this guy showed me here what he was working on, it was such an obvious problem. But only because we'd been doing all this stuff with the gut microbiome and he was old school sort of thing. Yep, maybe. Yep, but creatine doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. So creatine won't actually work to increase brain creatine, and that's been the big holy
That's the
grail.
interesting
How do
bit.
we build up brain creatine? Because brain creatine can prevent concussion and that sort of stuff. And man, the way brain creatine can prevent dementia and Alzheimer's is fascinating. When we go to sleep at night, our water content of our brain, so you know when our cortisol drops, our blood volume drops, we lose water in our blood vessels and that water goes somewhere else. That water goes into our brain. And our brain water increases by 60% when we go to sleep. Because our skull's a certain size, how does it fit that water in? It does it by shrinking the brain. So when we go to sleep, our brain shrinks and the water fills up. And we have like lymphatic channels through our brain called glymphatics because they got glial cells or the immune cells and they got glymphatics. So we fill up with water in our brain and we're supposed to move a lot when we're asleep, because we need to swish all this water around and get all that water swishing around our brain and clearing up all the metabolic waste that's been accumulating in the day, because it's that metabolic waste that actually causes Alzheimer's and dementias and Parkinson's. So actually hydration and sleep is the best way to fix Alzheimer's and dementias and that. But how cool is that? And it's all about flooding the brain with water.
It's like a big tidal movement at night, if you want to think of it that way. Interesting.
The moon
We've got the tea thing there, but
Time out for a huddle.
yeah, that's it. That's what it is.
All right, well that's cool, man.
But we are going to hang around.
We got one
aren't
more
we?
question. This dude's been stuck in the
okay,
corner
sorry.
there, been doing this. Yeah. So basically what it does is it helps to hydrate the brain and create some barrier. So when you actually do get the concussion, the injury isn't so bad, but then we get significant improvement and recovery and healing later. So there's so many different mechanisms. I shouldn't have mentioned it because I can't tell you too much.
No.
I will be shot if you beat me to it. No, we got these trials coming out and it's kind of legally binding. I just figured no one in Perth will be talking to Dick Ryder and all that, right? But yeah.
Dick Ryder. Well, look, what we're going to do is we're going to hang around. So if you've got any private questions or personal questions, we're going to hang around for about half hour.